5 different shading types. Take 3 and action! Hi everyone, my name's Liz, and today I will be drawing 5 different skulls to represent the 5 different drawing techniques that most artists go through. Now, to introduce my good friend Otis, who will be my drawing partner and my trusty pencil holder, as well as Mr. Dino, my rubber, who has been through so much trauma recently due to all my mistakes. As you can see, he's falling apart, poor him. And we'll be going through so many more in this video. Now, the materials that I need for this video to work out are the following: a brush, a blending stump that I found on Amazon that I can link in the description down below for you to try out, an ordinary household tissue, my fingers, of course, a normal HB pencil that you find in your local primary school, my sketchbook, and yeah, so let's get started. Now, if by the end of this video you find my content somewhat useful, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more videos just like this. Now, without further ado, I'll skip to the fun part. Hi guys, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your break. I'm just finishing the skull drawing that I will be using for this demonstration. Please don't judge me, it only took about 15 minutes for the purpose of this video, and all of the ones that you're going to see look different, so beware of that. But now you might be asking me, why a skull? Why not an egg or a triangle or a circle? Well, that's only because you can see so much more depth and you can play around with the shading a lot more than you can with a normal circle. when you start drawing more complex shapes or when you come across them more, it's not going to be as easy as a circle where you have your base shading, your light and your dark. It's going to take a lot more light proportion. Now, I'm starting from the top right of my skull, and you might be wondering why not start from the bottom or from the left. That's because the top right is where my light is. It's where the light starts on my skull, which means it is the brightest and also the cleanest. Now, remember, very few skulls have full white on them. Only if the light is very close to it, or if it's very powerful, or in some cases, if it's coming directly from the front. That is the only time that you can leave some of the shading fully white. But other than that, you always have a little bit of grey, a tint of it. Sometimes it's not even noticeable, but it would always be there somewhere. A very important aspect of shading is the pressure that you put on your brush. Now, for the darker areas, you want to press a little bit harder, but don't overshade it. That would mean taking all of the texture out, taking all of the lines that you made out of it, which some people may want, but in my opinion, don't, because that just takes away all of the lines that you previously drew and takes away some of the depth in your skull. Contrasting to the lighter areas where you can just press lightly and kind of breeze through them, because either way it will spread and it will give you a clean look. The brush that I'm using, you can probably find at any stationery store that you go to. I personally stole mine from my nephew's paint set. Please don't tell him, he'll be very mad at me. But I'm just going around in circles to cover more layers and to get the full experience of it. Now, my final review on the brush method would be this. As I was moving into the skull with the brush, I have to say I did not have high expectations. However, I was proven wrong. Not only was the application not streaky, it was also smooth and allowed a lot of flexibility with the shadows you were creating, as well as making the light source noticeable. This was in turn showing the 3D look that good shading does in the first place. However, as I got into the more darker areas in the eyes of the skull, the gradient became more difficult to control, as the lead was sticking onto the fibers of the brush, dragging shadows onto the lighter parts of the skull. Now, of course you could wash the brush or switch it out, but in all honesty, having to keep doing that could become a hassle. I then ran into another problem. In the finer, darker areas and the outlines of the skull, the brush grew even harder to control. Perhaps if I had a thinner brush to manage that, it would not be a problem. But overall, it gave a pretty good result and I was pleasantly surprised. This was pretty much it from the brush method. Once again, I was pleasantly surprised by the results, but we'll now be moving on to the tissue technique, which all I can say is a bit messier. This is the second method that I'll be talking about. I like to call it the tissue technique. Now, as I was saying, this is just an ordinary tissue that you'd find in your home, and I just wrap it around my finger like so to use it, and I start moving in circles, once again from the top right, as it is the cleanest part of the skull, just like before. Then, as I said, I'm moving in circles to get more coverage and smoothness, but then as I started to keep going, I realized that it was really difficult to move around the lead and to actually experiment with the shading. I also had to keep adjusting my finger and going on the edges with either my nail or the side of my index finger. You can use whatever finger you want, but I found my index finger easier. to get in between the lines and to actually get the shading that I originally wanted. I also found it really hard to blend into the actual paper, and I kind of just got this weird grey shade all over the top of my skull, which is not what I wanted. You could not see where the light was coming from. It was just kind of the same shade all around. I really hated it. But on the left eye, you can see that I picked up some pigment from the inner corner and I moved it downwards to underneath it, and it created this weird spot of just lead that, after trying to go over and over and over it and switching my nail and the part of the tissue that I was working with to not get the sides mixed up, I could not get rid of it. So it just turned out to be this weird dark blob, I'd say, under the eye, and kind of ruined everything else that I was going for. I thought I was making a redemption with it, but it didn't really work. So I just kept moving on, trying to work the best that I could with everything. As you can see, there were many failed attempts, and near the end you'll get your tissue breaking a lot due to the pressure that you put in. With the pressure, you don't want to go too light nor too heavy. I realized that as I was experimenting with it. It was difficult to do. I couldn't really understand which way to go and how much pressure to put in, because either way kind of just turned out grey and dark. This didn't turn out the best that I could have wanted, but it'll have to do. This is what I would normally use in case if I didn't have my blending stumps nor the brush. So not the best thing ever, but also not the worst. Next, we will have the finger technique, which I found to be even messier than this. So if you want to see me fail, stick around. This is the third method, the finger method, where instead of a tissue or a brush or a blending stump, you use your fingers to create the shadows and the darkness that you want on your subject. And I have to say in advance, I do not recommend this. It was messy and it was hard to control my fingers and create the type of darkness and shading that I wanted in the smaller crevices, such as the temple areas, the corners, and the inner eyes where you have the most darkness reflecting away from the light. I had to wash my hands twice for this to work, and I advise you to do the same or more times, but to also, after you wash your hands, to take off all of the remaining sweat or moisture off your fingers in order not to ruin the page, the charcoal, or you can simply have a cloth next to you, like I have Otis next to me here, to wipe your fingers of all of the remaining particles of lead. Looking back, I know that I use this method quite a lot and thought it was really effective, but once again, I strongly advise you to break away from it, because this is not something that most artists use in their day-to-day drawings. But next up, we're going to be looking at how to shade with an ordinary HB pencil. This is the fourth method of just the pencil, where I began blending in the inner eye corners. I had to sharpen my pencil thoroughly for this, so that I could get into the small areas and the crevices. I had a lot of control using my pencil, and I could easily mark out where the eyes ended and nothing looked out of place. I'd say it all fit. The darkness under the eyes was just right. I did not get any weird blobs like before with the tissue or with my finger. It was all exactly where I wanted it to be, just like the pre-look before the shading. I could get into the small areas and I knew exactly what I wanted, but when I was going in with the lighter areas on the top, I had to hold my pencil at between 30 to 50 degree, I'd say, so that I could get smoother, lighter and straighter lines for the top, because I knew that I wouldn't be able to blend them later and I couldn't rely on that. Although while I was shading with just the pencil, I had to obtain myself from using something else to blend, because in my opinion it just didn't really look right without it. Even though I had the cheekbones all laid out and the nose was where I wanted it to be and there was no weirdness about it, it just looked slightly off, I'd say. You could see me using the rubber here, and that did not work in the previous one. You might be wondering why I didn't use it there. But here I could, because there were only lines. There was nothing to fear about ruining the blending. They were only lines and I could easily replace them, unlike before where it was a permanent stain and I couldn't get it out. The advantage of this method is that you don't need to be afraid to make mistakes. They're easily erasable, and once again, you can go over and over it depending on how dark you want certain areas. There's no need to fear layering, just like shading where you might ruin another part when you layer something else. Here, you can just go over and over and over it until you don't want to anymore. Unlike some other methods, this technique was completely clean. As you can see, my hands and artists are completely fine, and so is the paper, which I am really happy about, as I did not get that before. The next method that we're going to be talking about are the blending stumps, which are the traditional and professional way of an artist. This is the last method that I will be talking about in this video, unfortunately. And for this demonstration, I am using professional blending stumps that I will link in the description for you to try out for yourselves. The specific set I'm using cost about £5 from Amazon and comes with 10 stumps as well as a sharpener. But because the blending stumps are made from rolled paper, the sharpener is a wooden pad with multiple layers of thin sandpaper you can peel off after every use. This is not only convenient, but easy to use and clean. As you can see here, it's very easy to go in the small crevices with this, as it is quite sharp, and it gives you all of the darkness and all of the contrast that you would need. It also doesn't erase any of the texture lines. Instead, it brings them out to give you a fuller look and more depth into your skull. Although I realize now that I messed up the lighting a little bit, I hope you understand that it is only for the purpose of this video and I did not want to restart the skull, as it is not the major focus. It is instead just a way for me to show you how each method works. Though the blending stumps are a very good tool, you can see that they came out a little bit streaky and you can tell the difference in between each lines. Though that may be my fault, I have noticed that in the many drawings that I have done. The only thing that I see as a minus for these stumps is that they leave quite a streaky mark, as you can see on the forehead of the skull. You can see the lines that they were on, and though I have tried to repair this, I cannot, even though I keep going over and over it with many layers. Contrary to that, it is quite easy to blend with normal paper, and you can see that I had so much freedom with the light. I just left a little bit at the bottom, showing all of the control that I actually have over my stencils and over my page. As well as that, the remaining lead left on the top of the stump can be used to fulfill any minor details, as you can carry the lead from one place, from a darker place, to another, creating an outline or a contrast in between them. I can also use this to add details into places that it might be erased, but this is not normally the case. You can see here that I am accentuating some lines with the remaining lead left on the top of the stumps, and that they are not merging together but instead being singular, and it's quite working out as they are individual and create a more deep meaning to your subject. Now, to mark the end of the video and to finalize my reviews, I have made a quick tier list of everything that I have used in this video. Starting off with number 1, I have placed the stumps, which once again are very easy to use, no mess needed, easy to clean up, and good. Then I have put the paintbrush, which is a great substitute for the stumps, worked really well. Then I have put the tissue, which was also good, but was a little more hard to use and mediocre. Then I have put the pencil, the HB pencil that I used. And last but not least, my finger. Once again, do not recommend that. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Ding, ding, ding. Or comment down below any questions that you have, and I will make sure to reply within a 48-hour notice. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.